The year was 1883, and time was a local matter. In the bustling station of St. Louis, Station Master Elias Thorne stared at the wall of clocks behind his desk. There were 6 of them, each ticking away with a slightly different rhythm, each asserting a different truth. One clock showed the local time in St. Louis. Another showed the time in Jefferson City, merely 100 miles away. The third displayed the railroad time for the Union Pacific Line, while the fourth showed the time for the Pennsylvania Railroad. To a modern observer, the wall would have looked like a mistake. To Elias, it was a daily nightmare. Train number 42 from Indianapolis is due at 2:15. His assistant, a young man named Clara, shouted over the roar of a steam engine outside. Elias rubbed his temples. Which 2:15, Clara? Indianapolis local time, or the conductor's pocket watch, which is likely set to Columbus time? The schedule says Chicago time, sir, Clara replied, hesitating. Chicago is 19 minutes behind us, Elias muttered, checking his own pocket watch, which he kept strictly to the sun at high noon over the Mississippi River. That means they are already late or early, depending on who you ask. Signal the switchman to hold the freight on the siding. I can't risk a collision because the sun hits Indiana before it hits us. This was the reality of America in the late 19th century. There were over 144 distinct time zones across the continent. Every town set its clocks by the sun. When the sun was directly overhead, it was noon. It was a system that had worked for thousands of years of human history, where the fastest anyone could travel was the speed of a horse. But now, iron horses belched smoke across the prairies, crossing 3 different local noons in a single afternoon. The telegraph wires hummed with confusion. A message sent from Boston at noon could arrive in New York before it was sent, according to the local clocks. But the real danger lay on the tracks. In August of that year, a head-on collision in Rhode Island had killed 14 people. The cause? The conductor of the westbound train had a watch set to Providence time, while the eastbound engineer was running on Boston time. The difference was mere minutes, but it was enough to put 2 massive steel beasts on the same track at the same moment. Elias looked out the soot-stained window. The world was shrinking, speeding up, but time itself was broken. Someone had to fix it. Hundreds of miles away, in a cramped office in New York City, William F. Allen spread a massive map of the United States across his oak table. Allen was not a politician. He was a civil engineer, a man of logic and lines. He was the secretary of the General Time Convention, a group formed by the railroad tycoons who were bleeding money and losing lives due to the temporal chaos. It's impossible, William, argued Charles, a representative from the Boston and Albany line. You're asking people to ignore the sun. You're asking farmers to wake up when their clock says 6 o'clock, even if the sun says it's 5:30. They will say we are playing God. Allen didn't look up from the map. He was drawing thick vertical lines down the continent with a charcoal pencil. We're not playing God, Charles. We're building a civilization, Allen said, his voice steady. Look here. Right now, a traveler going from Maine to California has to change his watch 20 times. That is not progress, that is anarchy. He pointed to the first line he had drawn, cutting through Philadelphia. We will call this the Eastern Standard. Everything east of this line and west of the Atlantic will share 1 time, not 50 times, 1. He drew another line, slicing through the heart of the Midwest near St. Louis. Central Time, then another through the Rockies, Mountain Time, and finally along the coast, Pacific Time. 4 zones, Allen declared, straightening his back. Just 4, each separated by exactly 1 hour. No minutes, no seconds. Clean mathematical hours. Charles scoffed. The towns won't accept it. The mayors, the preachers, they believe noon is when the sun is highest. It's in the Bible, William. The sun rules the day. You can't legislate the sun.
"I don't need the mayors," Allen said, with a dangerous glint in his eye. "And I don't need the preachers. I have the railroads, and in this country, the railroad is the lifeblood. If the trains run on standard time, the towns will have to follow, or they will miss the train." It was a gamble of historic proportions. Allen was proposing to synchronize a continent, not by law, but by corporate force. The U.S. government had nothing to do with it. The president hadn't signed a decree. This was a coup of time, led by the industrialists. Word of the railroad time plan spread through the newspapers like wildfire. In St. Louis, Elias read the headline of the Globe Democrat, "The Sun to be Silenced." The reaction was immediate and fierce. In Bangor, Maine, the mayor gave a speech on the steps of City Hall. "This is a tyranny of the machine," he bellowed to a crowd of fishermen and shopkeepers. "They want to steal 25 minutes of your daylight. If we adopt this Eastern time, noon will arrive while the sun is still climbing. It is a lie told by a mechanical clock." In Indianapolis, a preacher declared that railroad time was a sin. "God set the sun in the sky to mark the seasons and the days," he thundered from the pulpit. "To follow the time of a man in New York over the time of the Almighty is blasphemy." Elias listened to these arguments in the local saloon, nursing a warm beer. The men around him were angry. They felt that their local identity was being stripped away. If St. Louis shared the same time as Chicago, were they not just becoming a suburb of the Windy City? But Elias knew the truth. He had seen the twisted metal of the wrecks. He had heard the screams of the injured. "It doesn't matter what the preacher says," Elias told the man next to him, a burly blacksmith named O'Malley. "If the train leaves at 8 o'clock Central Time and you show up at 8 o'clock local time, you'll be standing on an empty platform. The world is moving faster, O'Malley. We have to decide if we want to move with it or stay behind watching the sun." O'Malley spat on the floor. "I'll stick with the sun. Let the trains run empty." But they both knew that wouldn't happen. The mail came by train, the coal came by train, the tools for O'Malley's forge came by train. The railroad was the internet, the highway, and the airline of the 1880s all in one. You could not boycott the railroad without starving. The date was set, November 18th, 1883. The newspapers called it the Day of Two Noons. As the day approached, a strange tension gripped the country. Watchmakers were inundated with customers asking how to reset their timepieces. Jewelers in New York City displayed two clocks in their windows, one labeled Old Time and the other New Time, showing a 4-minute difference. In St. Louis, the shift was drastic. To align with the new Central Standard Time, the city would have to set its clocks back nearly 19 minutes. On the morning of the 18th, Elias arrived at the station early. The mood was somber, almost like a funeral or an execution. The station was crowded, not with travelers, but with spectators. People had come to watch time change. It was an abstract concept, yet everyone wanted to witness it. The telegraph operator, a nervous young man named Timothy, sat with his hand hovering over the key. "The signal will come from the Naval Observatory in Washington," Timothy whispered to Elias. "They're going to send a signal down the line at exactly noon Eastern Time. That will be 11 a.m. for us." Elias nodded. He looked up at the giant station clock. It read 11:55 a.m. local time. "This is it," Elias murmured. "The last moments of the old world." Outside, the sun shone brightly. It didn't care about William Allen or his maps. It continued its arc, indifferent to the humans below. But inside the station, humanity was attempting to tame nature. "Signal incoming!" Timothy shouted. The telegraph began to click furiously. Click, clack, click, click. "New York has switched. Boston has switched. Philadelphia has switched." The wave of standard time was sweeping west, moving faster than the sun itself. It crossed the Alleghenies, raced across the Ohio Valley, and surged toward the Mississippi. 3 minutes to the switch," Elias announced to the crowd. He climbed a small ladder to reach the face of the great station clock. He held the minute hand. The crowd went silent. O'Malley, the blacksmith, was there, watching with crossed arms. "Signal received," Timothy yelled. "It is 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, now." Elias stopped the minute hand. He waited. He watched his own pocket watch, which still showed the local time. He let the seconds tick by, effectively stopping time for 19 minutes to let the new standard catch up, or rather adjusting it backwards. With a solemn motion, he moved the hands. The clock, which had been reading nearly 11:20 local time, was forced back. Click. It was now 11 a.m. A strange gasp went through the crowd. They had just lived through those minutes, and now they were being told those minutes hadn't happened yet, or rather that they were happening again. "Is that it?" someone shouted. "Do we feel different?"